This presentation brought to you by ShoreFit. Daniel Klinger is Vice President of ShoreFit and the founder of MTAC Industrial Solutions, a company that is laser focused on preventing pallet rack collapse events and holds multiple patents in this space. Daniel has spent much of his time and treasure trying to not only make warehouses safer by responding quickly to ongoing damage that is occurring around the clock, but also to pioneer rack repair and warehouse safety innovations that reshape the entire process and radically reduce repair wait times. The goal of this video is to sound the alarm about the lack of preparedness and the need for pre-planning for a pallet rack collapse disaster. This eye-opening call to action will help equip first responders to be ready for that day when the racks come tumbling down and the catastrophic aftermath of those life-threatening events demands a response unlike any other. We'll look at four things: the reality of the threat, what the data does and does not tell us, factors that cause a collapse, and the unique areas of concern for first responders and rescue professionals. A microburst in Phoenix tore off part of the roof of this warehouse, resulting in a collapse of pallet rack structures inside. It's rare that these events ever make their way to the news, and still, this story only made local news and received no national coverage. In addition to the property damage and loss of material goods, one warehouse worker was trapped in this debris and was found after 3 non-stop days of work to get him. Sadly, the man lost his life in this disaster. On April 1st, 2025, a warehouse in Brownsburg, Indiana was hit by a tornado. Notice how the view on the left gives the impression that the walls fell into a mostly empty room. However, the image at the right shows a different angle and reveals the truth. Pallet racking was just feet away from the collapsed wall. 1 or 2 more precast wall panels could have taken down the entire racking system, creating an entirely different scene. We all need to wake up because the threat is very real. Also real is the lack of planning for the response to it. While we applaud the few who have engaged in training to be ready for that day, the reality is that more needs to be done. We are sounding this alarm for the facilities as well. A serious threat is building by the day, yet there is a genuine sense of complacency by those in the industry who work in these buildings and labor to maintain and repair the pallet racks within them. Have you ever participated in a collapse response? Have you been trained for a pallet rack collapse scene? These questions matter, because here's what it looks like when everything comes crashing down. Even if you've seen this or other collapse videos before, the speed with which it happens and the complete destruction of the structures is still shocking. The forklift struck a horizontal beam before it even reached the vertical post. The force on the beam pulled the post toward the point of impact, creating a lateral load on a post that was designed for vertical or compressive load. That was the trigger that led to this collapse. OSHA estimates that pallet rack collapses cause $36 billion in damage a year. That's billion with a B. So why is specific data about them so hard to find? The truth is, no one, anywhere, is keeping good records of the frequency of these events or the casualties involved. When collapses do occur, details are often locked down and personnel gag-ordered to avoid public scrutiny. This lack of transparency has blinded us to the reality of the threat that created a culture of complacency. But think about it. If these events are not happening as most mistakenly believe, how can they cause $36 billion in damage? The idea that pallet racks can fail has become something of a dirty little secret within the industry itself. No one wants to admit the inconvenient truth that despite these structures being robust and over-engineered, they are still susceptible to damage, improper or overloading, natural disasters, poor installation, or other factors that can lead to a collapse. At both ProMat 2025 and FDIC 2025, we had many discussions with those in the material handling audience and the first responder audience about the reality of pallet rack collapse threats and what was being done to either prevent them or prepare and train for response to them. The answers were essentially the same between the two audiences. Nothing is being done. Because of the underpublicized nature of these events when they do happen, both audiences approach the topic with a false sense of security, as well as a complacency about doing anything proactively. Should that day come upon your territory, remember this quote: "Everyone involved in this effort needs to be doing everything they can to dramatically raise their level of preparation, from command and control to the first responders to the rescue professionals." It's critical, because lives may potentially one day depend on them having done so. Everyone has a role to play. Pre-planning is critical, but inherently challenging. A pallet rack collapse event is unlike most other scenarios for which first responders are routinely preparing, with structural collapse, hazmat threat, live utility, and rescue recovery all potentially in play in the same scene at the same moment. Beyond pre-planning, training specifically for a pallet rack collapse is needed, but also a very real challenge due to the difficulty in simulating the unpredictable nature and widespread devastation of such a catastrophe. Some forward-thinking departments and training professionals are beginning such efforts, which can save lives when it matters most. Where injuries are concerned, it's important to understand that the force it takes to create the severity of these injuries, such as crushing, impalement, amputation, etc., will also, most often, damage the structures involved as well, which has now also compromised the structural integrity of the affected rack. While the number of reported deaths may seem low, please remember that these aren't just numbers, but real people. Regarding the asterisk in the headline about the data being skewed, let's look at that. Here, we can see an overwhelming increase in these events prior to COVID. This increase can be attributed to the corresponding rise in e-commerce transactions over this time. Yet, look at what happens when the consequences of COVID are factored in after 2019. The data between 2019 and 2020 shows a dramatic decline. However, there is nothing to suggest that the events or the frequency of them have changed. As a matter of fact, it would be counterintuitive to suggest that the events have remedied themselves, given the explosive growth of e-commerce after the pandemic. It is actually more likely that these events have continued to rise, but the tracking of them is what has fallen off the cliff. Further, data since 2023 seems unavailable altogether. This black hole of information only strengthens the supposition that perhaps OSHA is not actively or accurately tracking these events at all right now. This apparent lack of reporting or recording is both troubling and the only real takeaway from the available data. So, what are some typical causes of these collapse events? This is a rare view of how a pallet rack collapse can wrap around a building column, resulting in bad physics and dangerous scene conditions for victims and first responders alike. This image depicts what happens when a horizontal or lateral force meets a building column that is engineered for vertical or compressive load only. The threat of secondary collapse, involving the building structure, is elevated at every column line. Either too much weight on the structure or inappropriately stored goods, heavy goods stored at the top instead of the bottom, can lead to a collapse. Caution! Anytime fire suppression is introduced onto the stored goods, their effective cumulative weight increases exponentially, which can quickly overwhelm the stated capacity of the rack system. Damage left unrepaired, or not repaired quickly enough, is equally problematic. Neglected maintenance can quickly lead to a failed system. Caution! Local departments can be catching and flagging this damage and requiring action by the owner to fix it. This is the most recent map of known seismic threat zones in the U.S. The structures that are typically stood in these highlighted areas are modified to accommodate the threat, but they are not impervious to collapse. Are you located in a high hazard zone? Caution! Aftershocks can lead to secondary collapses, capturing rescue personnel in the ensuing debris. This image depicts the aftermath of a tornado impact on a warehouse. Observe the collapsed roof and adjacent wall sections. Modern building construction techniques allow for a quick construction, but they also allow for a quick collapse. Caution! Once the roof caves in, the walls are no longer supported and will fall in or out depending on the prevailing forces. A pallet rack collapse can be easily triggered by a roof or wall collapse. Forklifts are, hands down, the most common source of damage to pallet racks. While the structures are designed to sustain critical impact without failing, it is the cumulative effect of unrepaired damage that threatens the facility and the safety of its personnel. Shown here is a previously repaired pallet rack frame that has been damaged again. Caution! When responding to the calls in a warehouse, it is important to step back and read the aisle. Any equipment that is still engaged with the pallet racks can be a threat. The following situations underscore the compounding threat to the lives and safety of people who work in modern warehouses, and increase the likelihood that the first responders and rescue personnel will be called upon to eventually play a role in rescuing the victims in the wake of a pallet rack collapse. Growth in e-commerce continues to be explosive, and while these rooms are engineered to accommodate the safe storage of literally hundreds of tons of goods and materials, they cannot be engineered to avoid collapse. The next force applied to an already compromised pallet rack frame, or an adjacent one, can easily trigger a collapse. When this happens, everything is typically over in seconds, and the debris field can take days to wade through in the pursuit of the victims trapped within it. Gone are the days of forklift operators that have been in the seat for years at a time with plenty of practical experience. Today's warehouses are filled with people with minimal training and even less actual experience. Couple that with the high-tech, high-reach equipment that they are operating, and you have a genuine threat to the structures they are trafficking. The push to deliver now has increased dramatically. Gone are the days of, please allow 6 to 8 weeks shipping and handling. Ours is a 24-hour pick-and-deliver-now world, and this pace introduces real and serious risks. Operators work under the mental fatigue of a constant sense of urgency, which has real consequences when it comes to safety. If you're a first responder coming upon a disaster of this magnitude and complexity, where do you even begin? Quickly identifying how many victims and their likely locations will greatly improve the odds of mission success as it relates to the rescue efforts, or the need for them. Aisle-by-aisle video surveillance footage is often found in the loss prevention office of a facility and can provide an accurate head count of employees, identify potential victims, and determine where they might be trapped. We will watch this full video later. If there is a likelihood of victim entrapment, scene intensity elevates and danger escalates. If there are no victims entrapped in the debris, the scene response is considerably different than that of a scene with one or multiple victims. First responders on these calls will need to make life and death decisions based on the unique details of a given scene, understanding that no two collapse scenarios are the same. Awareness of unseen threats, utilization of available resources, and operational oversight from a big picture perspective all contribute to mission success. Here are some images of what that day looks like when these scenes play out. While rarely considered, collapses are not limited to warehouses. Manufacturing centers and even retail locations are also at risk. This is a modern-day bucket brigade in action. The scene as the first responders approached the entrapped victim. Unfortunately, despite the heroic efforts of bystanders and first responders alike, the injuries sustained by the victim led to their loss of life. While not immediately obvious, the building column on the left is likely entangled in fallen debris and collapsed pallet rack. This situation depicts the secondary collapse threat discussed earlier, as well as the importance of reading the room before taking action. Watch the operator in the center of the aisle. This is the video that the still of a potential entrapment image was taken from. Whether or not he survived the collapse is not clear, but the video seems to indicate that he did not come out of the other side of the collapse. A typical scene after the collapse as people work to rescue the victim. These low-frequency, high-risk events are the most dangerous for first responders precisely because they are rare and unpredictable. As we process these images and the details provided in this video, we are compelled to take action. Only planning your response in advance of that day will leave you with any hopes of being able to act safely, quickly, and successfully in the golden hour of your rescue efforts. The following situations demonstrate the inherent complexity of a collapse scene and additional concerns which may be at play. Even though the scene has stopped moving after the collapse has occurred, the threat of additional collapse is prevalent, and all responders need to proceed with caution and deliberate intent. Observe how the building responds to the failed pallet racks within it. The building columns themselves failed under the applied forces and brought down sections of the roof system. This threat of secondary collapse is compounded by the likely entanglement of adjacent structures. So, dismantling the collapsed structures has to be handled gingerly if and when necessary. For that reason, the preferred path may be to simply stabilize the collapsed structures that are in the path of the potential victims. Communicating to first responders what was stored on the racks can be as important as understanding how to approach the collapse. Beyond the collapsed structures, the goods stored on them can impose life-threatening consequences to rescue team members. Everything from pressurized suppression systems to high or low voltage electrical systems can be present in the midst of these structures. Consulting with facility maintenance team members can shine some light on what may be in play, yet not necessarily visible. In addition to this, electrical motors powering conveyors and other equipment can be located randomly throughout a collapsed system. In a collapse, the structure itself will be buckled, tangled, and otherwise compromised. This complicates any efforts to dismantle it and creates a steel cage over any victims caught beneath it. Further, how these damaged steel components are handled or engaged in any way can easily trigger a secondary collapse. That said, the safer path may actually be stabilizing as opposed to removing these damaged components. These structures are fully compromised and cannot be trusted, so every move must be methodical and intentional, proceeding with extreme caution. Things can accelerate from bad to worse in the blink of an eye. At a minimum, these are the primary tools that will need to be brought to bear in a pallet rack collapse response. In addition to these tangibles, a good structural engineer would be a great asset at the scene. How the debris field is approached and carved through will be unique from scene to scene. The success of the mission will be greatly enhanced by investment in the pre-planning for it. In May of 2023, MTAC hosted the first of its kind county-wide awareness and training event with team members of the Hendricks County Rescue Task Force in Indiana. During the after-meeting discussions, Deputy Chief of Operations Jason Porter of Washington Township Avon Fire Department voiced his concern that the shoring struts they use would not engage these racks safely or reliably. This ultimately led MTAC to employ their engineering and design teams in the development of several mechanical connections for effectively engaging shoring struts with a collapsed pallet rack. The fruit of that effort became ShoreFit. Introduced in 2024, the ShoreFit adapter provides a safe, reliable, and otherwise missing connection between a damaged pallet rack frame and a first responder's shoring strut. Once deployed, the rescuer can more safely enter the danger zone with greater confidence of mission success. With the likelihood of a collapse being a multi-alarm event, numerous ShoreFit adapters in possession of all responding fire departments will likely be necessary due to the sheer size of the room and the potentially large number of entrapped victims. As with shoring struts, jaws of life, or thermal imaging, investing in the latest technology is always critical, even if it's scarcely used. With ShoreFit, first responders can successfully engage collapsed racks should the unthinkable happen in their response territory. This is where the rubber meets the road. We are in a race against time, a relay race that may well save lives. We are on your team, and we are handing the baton off to you. Run with it, or pass it on to whoever may need to take it from you and get it across the finish line in your territory. It's true that much can be learned from simply watching collapse videos online, but that can't be where our preparation stops. It's time to move from watching videos of a collapse online to preparing for a response to a collapse on your shift. Thank you for your time and consideration of these important matters. Please reach out for additional information or to begin partnering in the effort to ensure that you are truly ready for that day. We are on your team. Let's go to work.